I'm Bethany, and yeah, I've worked with Sophie to develop the show, and that was opened in October. And previously, you can see this was my practice previously, which was focused more on I graduated from critical fine art practice at Brighton and worked in industry for 3 years, starting with Garage magazine, a publication. And there was kind of like a collaboration between artists and fashion houses. And I kind of really loved that interaction. But I was on a fine art with theory course. And then from that point, I went and worked in industry for 3 years and was looking at like the way I was researching into relational aesthetics, where like art interacts with the viewer. But then I kind of wanted to move past that and was looking at how artists use their practice to kind of create social change. So I was researching that for my dissertation and looking into people like Superflex, like art collectors, which use their practice as kind of like multinational companies and kind of infiltrate commerce, but creating their own systems. So I was really interested in like alternative systems. And I grew up with my mum being a pattern cutter, and she did that in Liverpool, and I grew up on the Isle of Man. So I was kind of around garment making and interiors at home, and kind of really gravitated to that kind of area. And so then for my BA, I developed like a system with a local soup kitchen, and then yeah, did a system of exchange of garments and created a collection to donate profits back. And then from that point, I worked in industry for 3 years, and then I went to do my master's at London College of Fashion, I was looking at waste and the Boxley Food Bank and developing like in collaboration with them and Postcodes and creating like a new system. And then I started doing each collection clothing, looking at different systems and working with social manufacturing projects. And I worked with the social responsibility director, that's with from London College of Fashion, and their programme Making for Change, which has been set up in Downview Prison. And now they've been awarded funding and have set up another manufacturing site in Poplar Works. And so she invited me to do an art residency with the Zenu Foundation in Italy with a community called San Patrignano, which is a drug rehabilitation centre and also has like 50 areas of craft. So from that point, I then was kind of working with waste in the community and connecting that to the Making for Change project. And then I was introduced to further like social manufacturing projects. And I was then working with different charities on each collection and fundraising and donating 20% of the proceeds back. Yeah, and then that kind of led up to which was the alternative systems at the Design Museum, which was kind of a retrospect of those kind of that practice. And then another part of my practice, I helped set up the Emergency Designer Network with Phoebe English, Holly Fulton and Cosette McCreary, and that was displayed there, where in the pandemic we created a designer network, and during that time Net-a-Porter and Matches, their courier services weren't being used for delivering garments, so we worked to with them to deliver. Well, we set up a project where you could be one maker or a factory, and we'd give you a pack or supplies to make that scrubs, masks, or surgical gowns. So we set up that delivering to Net-a-Porter would like pick up the materials, deliver them to the studio. They'd all be sorted into packs, and with webbing materials, whatever was needed to construct, and that would be delivered to the maker. Then it would be collected from the maker or factory, couriered to a laundry, washed, and then delivered to 40 different NHS trusts. So it was kind of like systems design again, but kind of to deliver completely. And yeah, the emergency that was the pandemic. And then from that point, the Bethlem Gallery actually got in touch about working on the Maudsley Centre that's being built for children and young people. And that is that I've been commissioned to create a sculpture, a suspended sculpture in the main atriums. And this would be my first public commission. So I'd been working with fashion and other commissions that weren't kind of permanent yet. So this was kind of stepping into that. And at this point, I'd started to get unwell with a chronic condition that I have to do with pain. And I had to take time out 3 years to kind of get better. And I went back home to the Isle of Man to recover. But for the Pairs project, we've worked with natural dye and PPE from the hospital. So I wanted to work with waste from the hospital grounds and trees that have fallen. So that kind of connected it. And then for this project, this wild, achingly beautiful place. Yeah, I've been researching I've done a lot of research for my recovery to do with chronic pain and women's health and kind of the dismissed nature of that. And I was really interested to look into the archives here and see if there was a connection between chronic pain and mental health and chronic pain and trauma specifically. And then I wanted to look at historic research, but also current research. So we worked with Dr. Sula Wingasson to write. She's a researcher into chronic illness and mental health, and kind of using EMDR and CBT to kind of actually help with chronic illness and physical symptoms. So I was really interested in actually like providing some research and context around that. And she's written an essay to kind of accompany the show. So I kind of was really interested in, yeah, the history of the location and the history of the records, and kind of connecting that to my like lived experience. And this is kind of the first body of work I've kind of made about that as well. Like previously I've been making work about things that I wanted to change in society. But this is kind of like the first time I've actually opened up about myself personally. So yeah, so I think I was quite nervous about that. But I really wanted to work with natural dyeing, like with my process of recovery. Because I was so unwell with chronic pain, for pretty much a year and a half, I was not able to leave my house. And then I've built up my strength step by step. So like initially I was very light sensitive and sound sensitive. So I wanted to make sure that the gallery space felt like it was softly lit. Because I think for me, it took me maybe 2.5 years from when I got unwell to actually be able to enter a gallery space, because it was just too bright, too noisy. So I just wanted to make sure it felt inclusive to the senses. And then for me and my recovery, I really wanted to work with light as a marker to kind of show like how far I'd actually come. And then for the vessels, I wanted to make kind of these empty ceramic feeling, that they were kind of like empty shells. And for me, I found that going back to textiles was quite challenging. I think the pressure that I built up from my career previously, textiles felt so much pressure on it. So I just actually started going to a ceramic like at the Isle of Man College where I did my art foundation. I went there to just start being creative without any pressure. So I started in the ceramic studio, which was just something I wanted to do like for fun. And then that kind of brought me back to textiles through the ceramic shapes. I wanted to kind of work with more physical structures rather than something on the body. And I've kind of been working with, so I started foraging maybe like 2 years into my recovery, and it was something I was just doing like on my walks. And I kind of made a diary for the year of what was available in the Isle of Man. And I was kind of surrounded by like the Celtic history of the Isle of Man, and like the mark makings on the standing stones I was quite drawn to. And then these trees in Brandywell, which are like really beautifully shaped but by the wind. And I just really loved how they were kind of like eerily beautiful, and kind of like the highlands of the Isle of Man I found like where it's quite bleak, quite beautiful and still and no one around. And I kind of wanted to capture that feeling into the exhibition of, yeah, feeling like you're coming back to yourself and filling your cup back up, but having this eerily feel to it. So the first light piece was looking at the figure and being like hunched over, and I called this one the pain that changed me, and kind of, you know, the first stages of recovery, kind of being consumed by pain, but kind of starting to see, you know, like the seasons kind of starting to change. Um, yeah, and the light vessel here, the pink one, is like the figure kind of hunched over, but kind of coming back to life almost. And the standing stones and the sun kind of setting. Yeah, I've kind of thought of them as different stages of recovery for me. So the hunched over figure, the figure kind of coming back up, and then this one with the two figures holding hand, like, and I kind of felt like it's like meeting your authentic self for the first time. And so all of the vessels have been, sorry, all of the vessels have been naturally dyed. And so I've worked with horse, heather, and labories, which are natural to the Isle of Man. Yeah, so yeah, I wanted to work with like slow processes, and then they've been appliqued by my mum and Matta Silva. And then yeah, the painting is also new for me. And I stopped painting in my art foundation. And when I went into the conceptual art kind of course, we were kind of very discouraged from our painting and touch, and it was very like conceptual and clean. So I kind of struggled to get into that, and I've always worked with Melissa Kitty Jarham as an illustrator for the artworks in the fashion, because I just didn't have enough time to explore, and she's amazing. But she's been very supportive in actually like in this process for the appliques, and like supporting me kind of into painting again, which was kind of very new. And also I started planting things to grow as well for the project. Yeah, and when I was really unwell, I made a Pinterest board for my Life 2.0 Pinterest board. So it was like things I would like to do if I recovered. And so planting things, being in nature, and were kind of, and ceramics with big features on the board. And so that's kind of, yeah. And these are some of the kind of mark makings that I was really interested in. And yeah, the pattern cutting, and this was an area of the Isle of Man where there's standing stones. And I felt like I saw a painting in the Manx Museum of archable knocks, and he painted these trees. And I'd seen them driving past and couldn't work out how to get to them to draw them. And I was researching different standing stones. And then I went to these standing stones, and the trees were right next to the standing stones. And I feel like that's kind of where I found my drawing style for the first time again. So I think for this show, it's been really nice to actually like explore that again and have the time and space to be able to do that. So yeah, this is the kind of crouched figure, and it also features a little Celtic dog, which is my dog Bridie, who kind of really helped in my recovery also. Yeah, and this is madder, which I used. So I grew and from seed, and then I was using different dyes, but also different oxides to get different reactions with the natural dyes. So the curtains are used with madder and iron to make the reactions that are there. And this is kind of like the process. So I kind of wanted to create the empty ghost feeling. So I did a little sample on a vase that was my nan's, with the fabric draped over in a solution, and then I let it harden and then cut it open and resealed it. And I just like the feeling of it being like a ghost. And these were kind of like some of the inspirations, so like the archable knocks, the rubbings from the standing stones, the sample of the madder with iron, and then the illustration Melissa's created for the drawing, and that translated into textile. And I kind of wanted the overlay of the materials so that it would become translucent and you could see maybe colours over each other. And then for the porcelain pieces, like sculptures I've created, yeah, I kind of wanted to create a ghostly feeling within them. So I used porcelain. Well, I first casted myself and my mum and did a cast of a vase my brothers made, and then did a cast of my nan's vase. So it's kind of like the family lineage, but also like the connections of support that I was really lucky to have through my recovery, and the people that kind of held me through that. So like once would held in the holding we heal inheritance of light, and what is left is only light. So I did the casts and then made raku versions of them that would sit in the kiln, and then I mixed PPE and porcelain and put that inside of the raku, and then we put that into the kiln and then let it burn. And I kind of felt it was also a metaphor for kind of my past work in textile and fashion, kind of burning it, and also a metaphor of becoming, I don't know, a bit stronger, but also the fragility in the pieces. If they break, they break. Yeah, so I was trying to create this, yeah, I don't know, there's like haunting, ghostly feeling within the works. I'm working with light. And then this is kind of the process of sampling, creating the casts that then the porcelain would sit in. And then, because at first with these pieces, I could only create halves. And so I had 2 halves in the mold. And then I was working out how to make the 3D object, which this one I created a 3D mold for it to sit in. Like this one I had 2 halves and basically connected them together with tin wire. them to make a fully formed object. And this is kind of the casting process that I did, and then making it into the Raku versions, because the porcelain in the fabric would just go into liquid again, so it needed to have support so it held its shape in the kiln. And then for the orchid, I kind of wanted to create a connection between nature, the grounds, and also like the connection between inside the site and outside. And I really love the orchard and the positioning of it, and it being next to the secure unit as well. I just thought the juxtaposition of the nature and where it was situated. And yeah, I kind of wanted to create these banners that you would walk through with a figure cut out. And I was kind of thinking about parts work, and like how we have all different versions of ourselves, and kind of accepting those different identities. And the banners were all produced with natural dyes from the pavement. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to create this like accepting all your different parts of identity through the banners. So yeah.